Hi, I am Jashandeep, and today we will talk about alternative energy. So we will talk about what alternative energy is and what are the sources of energy, and then we will basically talk about hydroelectric power and hydrogen and fuel cell in this video. So let's begin. Alternative energy. So energy generated in ways that do not deplete natural resources or harm the environment, especially by avoiding the use of any kind of fossil fuels and nuclear power. That is what we call alternative energy. There are there are some sources of energy, which is solar energy, wind power, hydroelectricity, biomass, geothermal energy, hydrogen and fuel cells. So there are a number of sources of energy here. So let's talk about hydroelectricity first. Hydro, which means water. So hydroelectric energy means electricity which is generated from flowing water. We can say that hydroelectric energy is a renewable energy resource because it is produced from water, and we know that water is an endless source here on Earth because we have sun, which helps in water cycle. So water is having its constant uh, water is getting constantly renewed here. So we can say that it's a good source. So hydroelectric energy is really good kind of production of electricity using water. Let's talk a little about how we get the idea of hydroelectric energy. So almost 2000 years ago, Greeks, they used a wheel to grind wheat into flour. And the people, they got an idea from those wheels in 1700s that they can use those kind of wheels to run mechanical milling and in irrigation water in their fields, and from that they keep it inventing, and as of today we know that we have turbines and generators to do the same job as wheels did a long time ago. And now we use turbines and generators to produce electricity using water and hydro plants today. So there are two main types of hydroelectric production. First, we have dams here. So hydro dam utilize the potential energy from dam water to produce electricity. Dam is known as large barrier constructed to raise water level and also control the water flow in between. The elevation is created by the dam, which creates gravitational force for turning the turbine when water is released. Some dams also contain some additional reservoir at their base for water to store to pump the higher reservoir to released when electricity is in demand. So we know that what happened in dam is like we store the water kind of on a higher level, and then there are some turbines and we release the water which falls on a turbine, and then eventually those turbines they rotate, and that's how we produce electricity. And there are some additional systems or steps or procedures that we use so that we can actually get the current or to make to have that electricity. And then there is runoff river. So what happens in runoff river is we still use turbine and generators, but the difference is here that we rely on natural water flow. So it depends upon the rate of a river flowing. We do not use any kind of dam, or we are not having any reservoir from where we are releasing a water from a certain height that is going to fall on a turbine and then going to create electricity. Here we have running water of a river. It could be fast, it could be slow, and that totally depends upon nature. And that's how we get electricity from runoff river. Because runoff river hydro is subject to natural water variability, it is more intermittent than dam hydro. Then there are different kind of hydro plants. Basically, they're different in their size. There are some large scale hydro plants, and there are some small scale, and then there are even smaller hydro plants, which we call micro hydro plants. Let's talk about the benefit of hydroelectric energy. So first, there's flood control. Let's say that there is a situation of flood in an area. We do have dam or reservoirs built over there. By using those dams or reservoirs, we can store as much as water we can, which can definitely help toward controlling the flood situation. The next point, there is water supply. So let's say that there is not enough water supply in a region, but we do have stored water in the dam or reservoir, which we can definitely release and use it for completing the needs of that time, and that's how we can like cope up with the situation. So basically it's a helping. If it's flood, it's more water, we can store it. If there is less water supply, we can use the water from the dam. So basically it's helping from both sides. Then another point is reliability. Hydroelectric power is a domestic source of energy, which allow each state to produce their own energy without relying on international fuel sources or relying on anything else. And then there is another point, renewable. As hydroelectric energy depends upon water, and water is constantly getting renewed by its water cycle by using sun radiations. So all in all, hydroelectric energy is a good source of energy here. But as we know that every coin has two sides. If there are some benefits, there are going to be some drawbacks. So let's talk about some of the disadvantages of hydroelectric energy. Well, the first one here says that extreme level of emission of carbon dioxide and methane. So carbon dioxide emission happened during the construction, particularly due to the large quantity of cement used in the construction and building of those dams and reservoirs. And another, methane is there. So the plants which are under the water in the reservoirs, or we can say in the flooded area, makes methane, which is another greenhouse gas. As it decays, as those plants, those get decays under water. Then we can say that the cost of building dams, it's a little expensive to build those dams, and it really took a lot of manpower, and it does take a lot of time to build those big dams. Then another, we can say that reservoirs does cover a lot of land, which means we need to cut down a lot of trees, and which is like a loss of vegetation, and we're causing deforestation here. It does disturb the wildlife habitat. It causes loss of fish habitat, basically, which leads to the entrapment of fish and restricting the passages, because as we know that fish or any other animal, they do migrate. There is a certain time period when they do need to migrate to other places, but because now we have dams over there, there is a barrier between their passages. They can't really migrate now. It does cause loss of their habitat, and that's how we can lose a lot of other fish species, or we can say other water animals. So these are some of the drawbacks of having dams, so that we can have hydroelectric power. So from here on, we will talk about hydrogen and fuel cells. So what a fuel cell is. A fuel cell is an electrochemical cell that converts the chemical energy of a fuel, which basically is hydrogen, and an oxidizing agent, which it's oxygen, into electricity through a pair of redox reaction. There are some methods of how we produce hydrogen gas here. So first it's electrolysis, and then we have steam extraction. So let's talk about electrolysis a little bit. So hydrogen gas that we extract from water by a technique that is called electrolysis. What we do in electrolysis is we run a high electric current through water to separate hydrogen and oxygen atoms. That's how we get hydrogen gas out of water through electrolysis. Another, we have steam extraction. What we do in steam extraction is we get hydrogen gas or hydrogen atoms. We got that separated from carbon in methane, and that's how we get our hydrogen gas. Now again, there are some benefits and then there are some disadvantages of hydrogen fuel. So let's talk about benefits first. It says that it's eco-friendly because it only emits water. It doesn't give away or emit any other carbon dioxide or any other pollutant. We can say that it's a renewable energy resource, and then it is a powerful and efficient as well. So hydrogen fuel cells are generally they're having an efficiency of between 40% to 60%. Also, they do not produce any kind of toxic substances, so they're not causing any kind of harmful effect on the environment here. Let's move to the disadvantages here. So the first problem here is their storage complications, as it's hydrogen gas. As we know, gases, those are really hard to store. We can't really store gases in a regular life so easily. We cannot use hydrogen oxygen fuel cells in cars, as hydrogen is in gas form at room temperature and pressure, so it is difficult to store in car as well. And another, we can say it is really expensive. Hydrogen is expensive. It's a very good reason for this, is that it takes a lot of time to separate the elements from each other. So that's how we can say that it's not worth it to have hydrogen fuel cells used in a regular lifestyle. Also, they are dependent on fossil fuels a little, and again, these gases are highly flammable and these are volatile. So basically we can say that hydrogen fuel cells, we do use them, but it's like we can't use them in everyday lifestyle, or as in, there's an example, we can't really use them as a fuel in cars. So this is basically the end of my presentation here. If you guys have any questions, please send it in, and thank you so much.